we start with your full name, please?
Stefan, Stefan, B. Masiel, Masiel.
Where and when were you born?
Born in Poland, a place called Lida, Lida, Lida. And that's as much as I can tell you.
And what is your birth date?
1/27/23.
So how old are you today?
I'm 96.
And your experiences during World War II are a bit unique in the sense that you were taken a political prisoner as a teenager. And years later, you eventually joined the RAF, correct?
Yes.
Um,
After serving 2 years in the infantry, in the army.
in the British Army.
Well, it was part of the British Army, but it was a Polish division.
Understood.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was part of the 8th Army that eventually invaded Italy.
And then after the 2 years in the infantry, you volunteered
I
to be a
volunteered,
pilot
right,
with the RAF because they needed
right.
pilots. And you just missed out on the invasion of Italy with the infantry.
Absolutely, yes.
And as a pilot, what planes did you fly?
Spitfire. That was well, I trained on different type of planes to start with, and then eventually during the mission action, I flew Spitfire.
And do you know how many missions you flew?
I don't remember.
But you mentioned that you flew cover during the D-Day invasion of France.
Yes, yeah.
So I'd like to rewind. I'd like to talk about your childhood growing up in Poland.
Okay.
And your parents and your family life. If you could just tell me a little bit about
Yes.
that.
The town where I was born was very small, and I grew up with very happy family, and then we lived very close to the Polish Air Force base, and that's when I started to thinking about, I loved flying from the age of 10, and my plan was eventually to go to the Air Force Academy and become a pilot in Polish Air Force. The war interrupted everything because Polish Air Force, Germany invaded Poland very fast, and what we had in the Polish Air Force managed to escape through France to England. And that's where most of the Polish squadrons fought during the Battle of Britain, and that is 1940s. Yeah.
So I'd like to know a little bit about your life before the war started.
Okay. I was very happy. Then uh, I've done very good in school. In fact, I got a scholarship to go to the next type of school. It was more than just high school. And I was trying to do mass breaks in school, always thinking about maybe that will help me to go to the Air Force Academy in Poland. Had very happy life, teenager's life. And when I was 10, my sister was born. And then, so she grew up in the same house. And it was very modest house. And my father, my mother was just a housekeeper. My father was very minor civil servant. Uh, we had my mother's uncle had a farm about 15 miles away from where we lived. So I spent most of my summer vacation on the farm. And it was wonderful time because that's where I love fishing. They had a river going through. I love fishing. And then I remember September 1st. I used to bicycle from where we lived to my uncle's farm. So I remember coming back home, and from the distance, I could see smoke over the town. And then as I came closer, I realized that the the part of the town was bombed by German airplanes, and then they mostly concentrated on the airfield that it was close by, and that was, I think, don't remember now, but I think by September 15th, one night we woke up and it was every field was covered with Russian or Soviet Union troops, Russian troops. And they've confiscated every store, grocery store, and established the government stores. And what happened, they had, if you wanted to buy something, you went to the store, there was nothing except that some of the goods that Russian government store, and like they had maybe 10 different government stores, so different stores had different goods in them. Like one store would have all the shoes, and another store had very popular vodka. Another store would have maybe sugar. So what you had to do to stay in line from the very early in the morning, like 7 o'clock. It doesn't matter what store. It doesn't matter. Just you bought something from that store that they had. You bought shoes. You didn't need shoes. Different people, different stores used to buy different things. So that became a black market. So you advertise, you told people that you had shoes numbers, I mean size so and so, and I'd like to exchange for the kilogram of sugar or something. Barter system. And that lasted for a long time. And then, so I was there with my family. And then in 1940, in May, that's when I was arrested.
So when the initial invasion of Poland occurred and you returned home and saw the smoke, did you understand what was happening at first?
Well, we knew that the war was coming
Before the invasion?
because before the war started, there was a uh, agreement between Germany and the Soviet Union to split Poland before the war started. And so the plan was already, and it wasn't a secret that Poland is going to be invaded. So I had a feeling that that's it, that's war started. And so I had to get used to the living under Soviet Union until I was arrested in 1940.
So aside from the new way of purchasing goods and having to barter and trade with your
Yeah.
community, how else did life change for you?
Uh, the schools became obsolete. They closed all the schools. And then they reopened them, teaching in Russian only. And I don't think many people that used to go to school ever went to school anymore. So, and then also I had a very happy childhood until age of 16 when I was arrested.
Tell me about that.
Uh,
Do you remember what month, what day, and what month it was?
about what?
When you were arrested, do you remember what?
Yes,
what day
it
that
was. It was May of 1940, but I think I'm right. And I was taken to a prison, a local prison. And first of all, I was taken and left in isolation cell.
Take me through getting arrested. What happened? The Soviets
Okay.
came to your home.
One night, it was during the night, like midnight. We had a knock on the door, and it was our neighbor. And he said that I have some gentlemen to see you. That was their method of arresting people. They always brought a neighbor or somebody. So I don't know, that was their policy, I guess. And so they came and said to my mother that we are going to take your son for a few hours to ask him a few questions. My, we, it wasn't my first arrest. It happened to many young people. So we heard that they're arresting people for no reason at all. I was a Boy Scout, and that was a great reason for them to arrest me.
Because you had skills and
Boy Scout, it was kind of patriotic organization, like here in America, Boy Scouts.
but they viewed you as a potential future threat. Possibly.
That's right. I guess all the Boy Scouts would possibly give a problem later. So just remove them. Anyway, so they told my mother started packing some sandwiches, and they said, no, don't do that because we'll ask you a few questions and he'll be home again. And they took me to a local prison and put me in isolation cell. And that was a very dark moment in my life because I never felt so lonely because I knew that the Soviet, once you are the Soviet Union, under the secret police, you never know what's going to happen to you. So I was just left there, and just a cell. I had a window that I could maybe there were bars at the windows. I could jump and pull myself up and look at the street that was going behind the trees there. So I would pull myself up and see who's going in the street. And after a few days, I did that, and I saw my mother walking in the street. That was the last time I saw my mother or my family. And from there, from isolation, I spent a couple of days, and then I was taken to a local prison. Well, it was a different prison from where I was in isolation. So it was a bigger prison.
So you were in isolation for a few days?
I'd say maybe a week.
And did they say anything to you?
No. No.
They put you in there?
That's right. And then they took me to a different prison in town.
I'm sorry to interrupt again, but you mentioned when you jumped up and looked through the window, you saw your mother.
Yes.
Did you yell out to her at all?
No, it was too far away.
You just saw her from a distance.
Yeah, I just recognized her walking. I don't know, maybe she was hopeful to maybe take a glance at me or something. Anyway, then I moved to a different prison in town, bigger one. And I put in a huge cell that I had a shock because I would recognize a lot of neighbors that they were arrested and put in that prison. And I've noticed, I never forget, I knew a person who owned the bicycle store I bought a bicycle from. So I knew him very well. And I looked at him, I just couldn't recognize him because he was very obese. I looked at him and his stomach became a skirt, just a skirt coming. It was just hanging down.
He lost so much weight.
He lost so much weight, it must have been a very short time. And then mixed with all that, that room, I don't know, quite a large room, but was absolutely full of prisoners. A lot of the Iraqis, a lot of neighbors, I left fathers. Also, mixed with it is the people that were sentenced to life before war started.
You're in there with real criminals.
Real criminals that were, when Russians occupied, they kept them there. So it was a mixture of human mass that were from different ways of life. And it was so hot, that was end of May by then. It was so hot that we had to sleep on the floor, concrete floor. And at times, there was not enough to lay on your back. You had to lay side by side, like sardines, facing all in one direction, then during the night, then over on the other side, facing another. Eventually got used to it. And then I've discovered why that guy lost so much weight. Your portion, very small portion a day, was piece of very hard dark bread, a bowl of soup, always the same. It was soup made out of fish. It's a fish soup, but you find in it, in other words, the soup was made with whole fish, heads, eyes, everything in that soup. And that was day after day.
How many meals a day did you get?
Once a day, a soup, and then in the morning it was a bread. And then at night they give you some kind of liquid supposed to be coffee, but it wasn't real coffee. It was made from something else. Yes. And you couldn't go to the bathroom. The bathroom was right there in the cell. It was a big, looked like one of the trash cans. And then once a day, so you were not, had no privacy at all. You're exposed to everybody if you wanted to go to the bathroom. And then once a day, a couple of inmates would take it, empty that, and bring it back again. Hygiene became a big problem because we had our heads shaved, but we still maintained our clothes that we brought from home. It wasn't prisoner program. And it was absolutely infested with lice. So you spend some of your time taking shirt off and trying to eliminate all the ice that would hide in seams of the shirt or something like that. And just sat against, if you could sit against the wall, so you could prop yourself up against the wall. If not, you just try to lay down, because during the day people were moving all around. And I spent there, I was not interrogated at all in that prison. That was my hometown leader. And then I would say, I don't remember exactly, I would say that we were transferred to another town, a bigger prison. And I didn't know why then, but it was a point of gathering all the prisoners, eventually taking them to, dependent on their sentence, to different uh, concentration camps, different camps in Siberia. So,
So,
and
excuse me for interrupting, but up to this point, you still haven't been interrogated.
no, I was going to start now.
Um,
After being transferred to the place called Bialystok, it's on the map, so Bialystok, and I was put in isolation cell, and that's where my interrogation started.
Before we get into that, can I ask you how were you guys transported?
In trains, and sometimes short distances in big trucks, army trucks. They would uh, sit everybody. They knew how to prevent people of jumping off the train, of the truck. They would put first row first, people sitting down, and then the second row would sit on their legs, and third row, so you couldn't possibly get up. And anyway, so I put in, that was a big prison, put in isolation cell, and I discovered that all the walls were covered in little black spots. And then I remember first night I went to bed. There was a bank, metal bank. Went to bed, and bed bugs descended. You couldn't possibly sleep because they draw blood. And what happened, the people that lived before me, they squashed them on the wall. After a couple of days, the fact that I couldn't sleep, the light was on all the time in the isolations. One of the guards brought me a bag of powder, some kind of powder. And he said, if you make a ring, if you lay on the floor instead of bag, make a ring that will stop them getting to your body. Well, I tried that, and I discovered that the bed bugs were so smart, they would climb on the ceiling and just drop down. So I had to get used to it. While I would be called now and then in front of my interrogator officer, It's NKVD officer who spoke perfect Polish, and he asked me a lot of questions about life, about how I was being a Boy Scout. I also must have been involved because there's some group of people when they invaded Poland, created the bands, patriotic bands, and they harassed German troops. And so there are all kinds of accusations that I must have been involved in. And that lasted for about a month. In the meantime, when you're in that isolation sloop, I remember people yelling, screaming, some shots fired. So that when you lay down and you imagine why were the shots fired? Why were people screaming? They must have been tortured. I never discovered that, what happened. But so I was interrogated for, I'd say, about a month. Not every day, now and then. Interrogated, tried to put all kinds of ideas in my head, that I might have been involved, that I forgot. And then that was May, I still remember the date, May 41. And one day they came and empty, including me. Oh no, I'm sorry. I was called in at the end. Could have been a month, by the prosecutor. And he said, the court in Moscow, it's a secret court in Moscow, reviewed your guilt and you are sentenced to 8 years hard labor up in Siberia. Everybody who was in my position knew that will happen. A secret court in Moscow, you couldn't appeal. And then it must have been end of May. They took us to the train. It's a it's like a cattle train, completely converted to accept the people inside of each carriage. They had banks built, covered up with the straw, and then part of the door that slided had a bathroom, so you could go. And so they took us to the train, packed us on the train, and we were on our way to Siberia.
So conditions on the train were
absolutely terrible.
But in comparison to your previous imprisonment,
that's right. First of all, we were given sardines to eat, salted sardines. They were not really the size of the sardines. They were pickled, and they were very salty. So you had to eat those, and the water was very limited. And so we traveled through Moscow, and then I'm saying this because I looked on the map and I remember. And then we went to a place called Vorkuta. It's on the map. There's nothing, not very, very small town. And that was the end of the rail line. So we had to disembark. They had to sort us out to send us to there's lots of people on that train, sent us to different camps. The fact that I was only 17, they were kind of kind to me and tried to give me lighter jobs. Anyway, so there's a river called Pechora. So we had to go on the boat from the train, and from Pechora there was a cold river, Usa. It was one of the side rivers that ran into Pechora. And we were unloaded into our camp. It was a very long wooden barrack, and bags, top and bottom, and covered with the straw. And, and by the way, just before we went there, the guards told us that the Germany attacked Soviet Union. And I remember that day, it was 1941, June 21st, 1940. Everybody was very much relieved because before there was no hope for life because people were just dying like flies. And now there was a hope because talking about between the gods or talk between the gods, we kind of surmised that Germany really pushed it. In fact, at the time, I don't know, they were very close to Moscow. Anyway, so the job, they still gave us the job. My job was to the huge logs that were camped up the river were floated to us. And our job was to retrieve them with great big hooks or, retrieve them from the river, from the river. I'm sorry?
Manually, you didn't have machinery to do this.
No, you pull them manually from the river on the conveyor belt, and that would take up to some other people that would cut them in certain. So my job was to just pull the logs out. And so we spent there, and that was terrible life. I was very lucky that I must have had a very good immune system because I never had a cold. Now the people there, the people that slept on the banks next to me, and we were completely starved. We never had any vegetables or anything were depleted of the vitamins. And the there was something started that really depleted everybody there. It's a night blindness. And what it does, as soon as sun gets down, you become completely blind. Now, the fact that I was still healthy enough to resist, like other people, I had a blindness too, but some people had diarrhea, for example, and they were blind, couldn't get to the bathroom, and people are just dying like flies. And then the guards knew what it was, and one day they brought a truck full of onions, raw onions, and they just dumped that in the exercise yard that we had as well. So anyway, everybody knew that onions would help us, and it did. It cured completely. In few days, the blindness disappeared and got people back to. So I still eat raw onions now and then. And, and then one day, after being there, I think about 6 months, the order came for all the political prisoners to be released. The railway system was in such a disarray that they said, it's up to you how to make to extreme south of Russia and then join the groups of people that will be fed up, I mean, brought to the normal physical condition, and they would join Polish army that already was formed by the Soviets that would join the Soviet army and will be part of the future Polish government. So they already had a plan to install communist government in Poland. We knew all that, and one day, I think it's 4 of us crossed the border, Afghanistan border, which was occupied by Britain, British army. And then eventually, they already had people coming. You know, so they took us to Tehran, Iran.
Now,
And that's when I joined the Polish army.
now are you still wearing the same clothes that you had when you were arrested?
So I mentioned too, I forgot to mention, when we landed in Vorkuta and then got to the Pechora and then to that, we discovered that the sky was gray, and they issued us hoods with the mask. They're mosquitoes. You couldn't possibly do anything without the mask, and the gloves cover all your body. And that was issued before we get into the camp. And because the at that place, they had a permafrost. You just dig 12 inches, and then it's uh, frost. Where it is frozen. So we had to wear those masks all the time when we were there.
So you mentioned the sky was gray. Are you referencing that there were that many mosquitoes?
That many mosquitoes, yes, yeah. We were sure. That's one of the many shocks that we had. And again, we were starving, absolutely starving.
How much weight would you say that you lost during your imprisonment?
It's difficult. I'd say half of my weight. I was, there was a group of us started from the labor camp on the train going down. We decided to make a group and do our best to get to them. And then, so we boarded the train in Vorkuta. And as we were coming down on the train, it was a good train, by the way. We looked on both sides of the railway. Every few feet, there was a German dead body because the war was raging and the Soviets would get prisoners, German prisoners, and they would send them to replace us in those. Anyway, that was quite a trip from the Vorkuta to the Afghanistan border. We had to stop and maybe those long guards on the lots of goods trains, so we would go maybe steal some of the things from the goods train. Remember stopping some of the villages, and people were very nice. At that time, most of us spoke pretty good Russian. And so, close to Afghanistan, and then in Tehran, that was a nucleus Polish army. And I joined the army.
Now, aside from the lack of nutrition and food, was there any violence that occurred to the political prisoners or yourself from the Soviets?
No. You mean at the camps?
Yeah, did they mistreat
No,
the prisoners?
no.
Yeah.
They knew that the life we were living there was harsh enough for to them. Yeah.
And then how would you guys, or how would they handle the dead within the camps? Did the prisoners have to take care of them, remove the bodies and bury them, or?
Oh no, they would take the
Soviets.
bodies and disappear. I remember one of the guys from the Latvia, I believe. He was a little bit older than me, and we slept side by side on the banks. Some of that could walk and were younger slept on the top bank, and I remember I walked one night, and he was dead next to me, and he was a little bit younger, or maybe older than me. But people just dying like that.
It was a pretty common occurrence.
Yes.
Did you tell him the story about the butcher in the prison? The guy that ran the prison cell, the first one in the prison? Or do you want to get into that?
Well, I mentioned to you that in Bialystok, most of the population, mixed population, were all the old prisoners that were left when Poland was in existence. And they would take advantage of the new prisoners that we were, and they were in charge of everything. And they would say, today, as you take the parasha or toilet, and they never do anything like that. They were dominating the cell. And I remember there was a teacher got order from that guy. The guy was he was sentenced for life. He was serving life sentence, and they got into argument, and they started to fight. And that guy that served life really injured that guy. He beat him to blood. And of course, guards never interfere in anything like that. Anyway, next morning, when we woke up, we discovered that lifer, the guy that served life, had the throat split, and everybody knew that was done by that teacher. So they removed him, and that's it. Nothing happened after that. So things like that happened in so many instances that it's a shower once a week, a cold shower. And that's it.
So once you guys were released from prison, you made your way to Afghanistan,
Right.
and you joined
Yeah.
The army.
They did intended us to go to Pakistan. They wanted to feed us up, bring us to normal physical condition, and force us to go and join the Polish army. That was part of the Soviet Union army.
Under Soviet command.
As under the Soviet command, yes.
So now they wanted to treat you well and get you back to health.
That's right.
To benefit.
And what happened, one of the generals that was part of that Polish army became president of the Poland after the war. So Poland had two governments. One was in London, original Polish government, and one was in Warsaw, was in charge of the communist Poland. That created a lot of problem because after the war, there was a victory parade in London, and every nation that was in part of the effort to defeat Germany was a part of that parade, except that when Stalin and Churchill and President Wilson, no, President, who was President?
Truman?
Yes. Signed the agreement after the war. Stalin insisted that everybody recognizes Polish government that was in Warsaw, the communist government. In fact, he said that the Air Force that were in London were excluded from the parade, and they wanted to include a part of the Air Force from the Communist Party. And Polish members of the Polish Air Force were excluded from the parade, and that kind of created a problem after the war. In fact, I became a member of the VA, I mean, Veteran Administration, because after the war, the parliament knew all about the Stalin, and they voted that Polish Air Force and Czech Air Force, because they were in the same position, could become a members of VA here, get all the benefits of the
Get the same benefit a U.S. veteran.
right, yeah, and that's why I became I'm part, member of VA. So
But you went through a lot between getting out of prison and then ending up
yes,
in the U.S.
It's
So
and
can we
then,
talk about when you arrived in Afghanistan and how you came to join
well,
the Army?
well, they took us to Tehran. There was a big aircraft factory, a German aircraft factory. It was built there during the Shah was, before the war. And so I remember they put us in there to give us. And then they called each one of us and put us on the list, and we became member of the party. And then they created groups of other people, and we decided already training, go in the desert and started whatever army teaches you. I remember I started training as a sharpshooter. Anyway, so we were training outside Tehran.
Was there a period of recovery before you started training and getting back to health and strength?
Oh yeah, we gradually got back to health, not to normal health. It took us a long time to get to a normal health. Anyway, so from Tehran, I was already a member of the Polish army. From there, we went to a place called Ahvaz, which is center of Iran. And we waited there. It was awfully hot there. Waited there. And then they took us in the army trucks. They took us to Palestine. And there was a big camp, Polish army camp. So we became in Palestine, we became part of the bigger Polish unit. And so we trained there, but we became, we liked it there because we used to visit places like Tel Aviv and, different towns. And we also, we used to go to Syria and train in the mountains because we knew that the part of Italy that we're going to try to invade is all mountainous. So we trained in Syria partially. And I remember I caught a malaria, and I was taken to an international hospital, military hospital in Beirut, where I recovered from malaria, returned to my own unit, and so I remember we were already trained in the army to go to Italy. And the place was Mosul, which was Iraq. We were stationed there, ready to go to Italy. And I remember order for my unit came to go to Italy. At the same time, order from London, I guess, came for me that I was approved to go to England.
Because you had volunteered to be a
And
pilot.
yeah, when I signed for the army, I already signed for the Air Force because they told us that Polish Air Force, during the Battle of Britain, is being completely depleted. People lost their pilots, and they were looking for the volunteer to fly to be a pilot. So when I joined the army, I already volunteered to go. Okay, so my army friends were packing to go to Italy, and I got the papers to go to London. And that's when the long, long trip to England started.
Was that sort of bittersweet for you to be leaving your comrades that you've been training
All
with?
my friends went to Italy. And eventually, most of them were lost because there was a big battle, very famous, Monte Cassino. A lot of them lost. So I felt sorry, but at the same time, I was very elated that my dream to fly when I was a young child could possibly be realized.
Which probably seemed impossible just
It was
a few months
absolute,
prior.
that's right. And then long trek to go to England. What we had to do, somebody knew about. There are two of us from the army. He was in the same position there. We had to, they just couldn't take us to England. We had to wait for different means of transportation to get to England. So from Mosul, we went on the troop ship or cargo troop ship. And we went and stopped in Karachi. Karachi was a part of India. After the war, Pakistan became apart from India. So Karachi was part of India. So we stopped there for a month or so because there wasn't anything going, that we would take a ride. And then I think we spent about a month in Karachi, and then another ship came that was going to Bombay from Karachi. We jumped that ship, and then we stopped in Bombay, spent there a few days, no, a few weeks, and then big convoy came, military convoy, came to Bombay, and they were going to go to South Africa. So we were placed on the troop ship there, a part of the convoy. Very good experience because we were caught in the typhoon on Indian Ocean. And it was very, very bad experience for a lot of people. They were seasick. I was lucky I wasn't seasick, and that was a very good indication that I can fly a plane. Anyway, from there we stopped in Durban, South Africa, because that convoy went back and we were waiting for another ship to go to England.
You guys are basically hitchhiking your way to England in a sense.
Anyway, we waited in Durban for maybe a month, or maybe less. Anyway, it came. A ship, apparently it's a new one, very fast, ship called Empress of Canada. So we boarded that, and they decided that she was fast enough to zigzag to avoid the U-boats. We got to the opposite Sierra Leone little country on the west coast of Africa, and that had also a British naval port. Anyway, it was right on the equator. And then maybe 200 miles straight east from Freetown, we got torpedoed during the night. A bad experience. I was lucky enough to get on the lifeboat. I discovered that we were carrying Italian prisoners to England to work on the farms. I think there were 300 of them. And a lot of different troops going to England. And that was the most horrible experience in my life, because what happened, I was in the boat, but a lot of people couldn't get on the lifeboat. So they were on the rafts. They had life jackets on, and on the wooden rafts, they were thrown into the water. Next morning, when we woke up, the oil from the ship was covering maybe 3 inches thick all over the place. and anybody that was on the raft was absolutely covered in oil, black oil. And by the way, as we got torpedoed, I was in a lifeboat, and then we could believe that maybe 200 yards away, the boat surface, U-boat, the hatches open, and the sailors jumped out and started to yell in English, "What boat is that? You know, that we just sent torpedoes." And then they started talking in Italian. So I thought, my God, will they take us prisoners? Or we didn't know what happened. And they played the searchlight on Empress of Canada that was gradually sinking. And later on, we discovered which boat was the Italian boat. Anyway, they waited, playing the searchlight on the boat, waited maybe half an hour, yelling through the megaphone if there was anybody left on the boat. And then, and everybody that was on lifeboat could see our own boat going gradually under. And then when they discovered there was nobody, they sent another torpedo and she sank. We could see it. Never forget. You see boats going under, you know, on the movies, and anyway, so and then they gone.
Where were you when the torpedo hit?
I was on the lifeboat.
You were already on the lifeboat.
Oh yes, they waited about half an hour, playing the searchlight on Empress of Canada, making sure and yelling in English, "Is there anybody on the boat?" So they were fair enough. It was a fair game.
Oh, so you got off the boat before they even.
Oh yeah, before.
The first torpedo hit.
A what?
Are you talking about the first torpedo? Or the second torpedo?
Second torpedo was sent to just finish the first torpedo. But they gave us a chance on the people on the boat.
But you were on the boat when the first torpedo hit.
Oh yes, I was on the ship with the first torpedo. That's everybody was asleep. That was during the night.
Yeah, I guess that was my question. When the first torpedo hit, where
I was on the top deck, I remember, watching the sky, looking for Seven Cross. It was right on the equator, so it was a beautiful sky. No lights on the boat. You couldn't even smoke a cigarette because of the U-boats. And then I remember having my friend next to me, and we had life jackets as a cushions, you know, and we're just laying down. And then I fell asleep, and I heard some. First of all, I noticed all the lights were on, and then people started running around. So then it dawned on us that the boat must have been torpedoed. And then she started to listen to one side. Luckily enough, we ran to the rail to the boat, and it was on the very top deck. I looked down, and it was darkness there, and I knew that if I jumped there, I could have jumped on one of the wooden rafts, and there was a rope going down. I thought I better write it down. And I did write it down right in the middle of the lifeboat, full of people, right in the middle of the lifeboat.
Just by chance.
By chance. Saved my life, maybe. And then we got away from our ship. And then we saw that Italian ship.
I imagine there were a lot of people who never made it into a life raft.
Right. Well, there's lots of people. We had 300 Italian prisoners under the decks. They all perished. Some of them escaped and tried, but a lot of people just floating on the wooden raft. Anyway, what happened? Okay, boat disappeared, U-boat disappeared, and just left us on a lifeboat. Next morning, when we got up, everything around us was black. Everything was black. People just, four of them were just having life jackets hanging to the sides of the rafts. And they were all covered in oil. It's all black oil. So that was next morning. And then I think during the night or next morning after that, we woke up and the sea was clear. What happened? That the currents took us away from the oil patch and the sea was clear. The only people that are still floating on the rafts, still covered in oil. And then sharks came. And it was a frenzy. They must have, you could count them, that many of them. And they started pulling all the people that were hanging down, trying to, and so you can see the rafts floating by with only half of the body. The bottom parts are already gone. And of course, all that blood fed the shark, coming more and more and more. That's a very bad experience.
There's nothing you could do but sit
No,
there.
no. Every lifeboat had a couple of sharks just waiting, for. So I remember we started pushing them away with the oars, but they were there. They could smell blood. And then we spent another night, but before the boat, Empress of Canada sank, the bridge sent the signal to Freetown, told them that we were torpedoed, and
to send somebody to search for you.
And they did. They came, couple of a big, naval ships came, and they were still searching for that U-boat, going around, throwing the depth charges, but rescuing all the people from the. Okay, so that was a horrible condition because the sharks just wouldn't let the people taken away from the raft. I remember sailors standing on the top and shooting them with the rifles, the sharks. And they were frenzied, blood frenzied. Anyway, so we were taken to Freetown. And we spent there a few weeks recouping from bad experience. And the ship came from England, Mauritania, I remember, big troop ship. Picked us up and took us to England. I remember landed in Liverpool, and then I went to Blackpool, and that's where I joined officially RAF.
Now,
Started school there, flying school.
now, were you hesitant to get back on another ship after the last one that you were on and just been torpedoed?
We were terrified. Somebody shut the door aloud, they were all jumping. We were a bundle of nerves. Nobody could forget the sight of those bodies and sharks. And so that lasted with everybody. I'm speaking to myself, but everybody. It must have been a long time, a very bad experience.
Do you know, by chance, how many people were on that ship to begin with, and how many survived?
There is, if you go to on internet, Paul, if you go on internet, tells you all about the sinking of that ship. And now they know the name of the boat, Italian boat. It was the Leonardo da Vinci. You know all about that boat now, and it describes you all the members that were saved from that ship. It's all on internet. I think Paul is trying to get it on. And that's pretty rough life before started school. Go through different lessons to get in order to get to.
So you're saying there's a lot of tough
Yeah.
lessons.
Anyway, yeah, before you start flying, you're eligible flying, you have to go through different courses on the ground. And then a solo, first flight solo, I remember, was a very.
Okay. I'm just going to read this real quick. This is about the sinking of the ship. It says, the return voyage from Europe was not less dangerous than the trip north had been. On 13th of March 1943, while en route from Durban, South Africa, to Takoradi, carrying Italian prisoners of war along with Polish and Greek refugees, the SS Empress of Canada was torpedoed and sunk by the Italian submarine Leonardo da Vinci, approximately 400 miles south of Cape Palmas off the coast of Africa. It says of the approximate 1,800 people on board, 392 perished. Nearly half the fatalities reported were Italian prisoners.
Anyway, so
your first solo flight,
very first solo,
what was that like for you? You're realizing your
first,
childhood dream.
it was a very old biplane called Tiger Moth.
Tiger Moth?
Yes. A biplane covered with the some material. And the first flight, all the instructors were ex pilots that done their duty already. Anyway, so instructor's job is to take you up and make you sick.
Intentionally.
Right. And I told you during the hurricane there, I was never sick. And he could get me sick. And then, so from Tiger, I think about 12 hours or something, so I became flying solo. And then from there, from Tiger, I went to the another station, go to the faster plane. Okay, that's where you choose of being fighter pilot or bomber pilot. So they separated bomber pilot went to train on the twin engine plane, and I trained on the AT&T was still flying here a few years ago. It's called the Harvard, but it was made in the United States. And that was my second plane. That's where I trained everything, bombing and uh, the aerobatics and everything of that kind. And then from there you go to uh, another school, and you fly double-seated Spitfire with the instructor. And then you're sent to squadron. And, and the squadron job was low flying, provide the umbrella of the landing ships, and then go behind Germany line, strive everything that was moving. And that was kind of fine flying. Didn't see many German planes in the air. I think they were short of gas already, oil. And then war ended, 45.
So how did it feel the first time you flew solo? What did that feel like for you? What was that experience?
I was elated because I always dreamed of flying. I'd never been since age of maybe 10 when I was never been in the plane. And here I am after all the experience. And here I am lucky enough to be in the plane. And I just couldn't believe that it happened to me. So, and then, end of the war, we were moved to a camp called resettlement camp that people, Polish airmen, put in a special camp with the ex-RAF station. And then we were waited for the gradually to be discharged. And it was very close to a very small town. So we used to go every Saturday, used to go to the town. That's where I met my wife.
Before we talk about that, I'd like to rewind a little bit and talk about some of the missions that you flew.
All right.
You mentioned earlier that you flew cover on D-Day for the invasion of France.
All right.
Can you talk about where you flew? And I know you mentioned.
Don't remember.
Okay.
I just don't remember. It was so many things happened, different places.
You know, if mainly your missions you were flying over France for the majority of them?
Yeah, over Germany too.
Germany.
Yeah. the backlines of the Germans. They were still fighting. War was on. So
Did you do any escort for bombers or
no,
just for the
no,
invasion
no.
missions? Did any of your missions stand out in your memory at all? Anything unique about any of them?
No. I knew I was the fact that you fly with friends and the fact that it's you helping invading ships. That kind of give you courage. And then I remember striving a moving train, and I remember hitting locomotive. I don't know what happened to it, but it happens when you fly very low. It happens so fast. It just, you don't know what happened.
Flying at a high rate of speed.
Yeah. But I was very glad when war finished.
What were your feelings towards Germany and the Soviet Union? They invaded your home country, and the Soviets took you prisoner.
Well, Stalin was in charge there. Nobody killed that many people like Stalin. People killed their own people because they're building big canals, everything, And then Vladimir Putin was his protege. He's still here. He's still dreaming about creating this Soviet that was when at the end of the war, they took part of the Germany, created East Germany, Poland, Czechoslovakia, all those countries became communist. And I'm convinced that Mr. Putin is still dreaming about that eventually will happen. So I don't want to talk about the way we live now, but to be living in the past or going through 96 years as I went. That was a most important university that exists in the world. It's learning your experience and remembering all the experience. And that will definitely help you to go through many things very easily. So here I am.
So when the war had ended, up to that point, had you tried to reconnect with your family at all, your parents?
There were so many coincidences in my life that, first of all, going back to my childhood, I had a cousin who was drafted into the Air Force as war started, and then he disappeared. The war ended in Poland, and he disappeared. We never heard from him. So we thought he was killed during the war. Years after, when I went to a flying school, there was a big mess. Everybody was eating their lunch, long tables and the benches. And I sat on the bench and I looked in front on the other side of the table. And my heart stopped. And I looked at his face. It was my cousin. After all that happened, we had to be, and he was on that station quite a long time in Taiwan. If we didn't sit for lunch at that, I would never know what would happen to you. Yeah, then I was working in Canada. We lived in Vancouver, British Columbia, and I had a job in the big shipbuilding place in Vancouver. And I was a draftsman. And one day we had lunch, and my chief draftsman, my boss, was sitting next to our little table, and I overheard him talking to the other guys how he was stationed in Sierra Leone in Freetown when the Empress of Canada was sunk, and he was there as a part of the maybe rescued crew. That was another very unusual incident. I had so many things that happened to me that were very unusual.
What about your parents?
Okay, let's go to my parents. After the war ended, I kept saying letters to my old address where I was born, and no answer. I went to International Aircraft with the letter, gave the address, and never received any mail from my family. And then in 1950, it must have been 1958, when Mr. Khrushchev visited United Nations and visited Canada. Do you know who Khrushchev was? He was leader of Soviet Union, as a president of Soviet Union. Okay, so he visited Canada, and I was reading paper one night about him visit. He went to United States. Apparently he was banging the table that he said he'll bury everybody, and then he was in Canada, and somebody, a lady, said that she had a very similar situation, that she left her family there during the war, and she tried to get in touch with them. And apparently, while Khrushchev was in Canada, in Ottawa, she got an answer. She sent another letter, and she got an answer from her family. Something must have happened. So I thought, I'll write another letter, not hoping to get anything. And I got a letter from my sister. And so my parents still alive, were alive then. I was 58. And I got a letter that my sister still lived in the same place. And my parents were very glad to hear from me, but they were very sick. And I think few months after that, they both died. So I'm still corresponding with my sister, but she lives now in Belarus, the place that was Poland and became Belarus.
Did you ever return to your hometown?
Yes. In 1992, I believe, when Soviet Union collapsed, it was kind of a transition from the Soviet Union to Belarus government that tried to be independent. And so I decided to take my wife there. And we did go and see my sister. My parents were dead. And we had a shock because I told you, but when Soviet Union invaded Poland, they established government stores. When we got to Belarus, there was exactly same stores, government stores, nothing on the shelf. And most of the people worked for the government. So when we got there, my sister did their best to lay the best food on the table. And there, the good food was kielbasa, sausage, and all other things that, it were very difficult to them. But the way they got that from is from the labor that they exchanged for something else.
So that same barter system was still
Barter system is still going on. My brother-in-law used to work for the government dairy, and he drove the truck and he was distributing the butter and milk and to different stores. But he would drop some of the, maybe a bucket or so, milk or something, in a place where nobody knew. And then later on, he paid for that kielbasa, but giving them some milk. Everybody drank vodka. And so I still correspond with my sister, who died 2 years ago. So I have nobody left there. But her son moved into a same house after she came.
the same house you grew up in?
Yes. So that house is still there. And I feel sorry for those people that still live there. Obviously, conditions change completely now, like they changed in Moscow, and But
Why didn't you return home after the war?
because I had experience with the Soviet occupation of Poland. Told you about the stores and told you about people living there, and the propaganda all the time. And then, if I returned to Poland after the war, there was a communist government. And I remember few people that returned to Poland. They were sent to prison because they were part of the Polish Air Force and part of the, they recognized the government in London.
It was dangerous for you to return.
It was. And I wouldn't accept the life. Like I wouldn't accept, never would accept a socialist government in this country. I can open that because I had too much experience with social government. That people are not free, they belong to the government. Government dictates everything in their life. So I had too much experience to enjoy this country, which is the best country in the world. That's why everybody wants to get in here. Nobody wants to get to Russia now. They're not turning people away from Russia. And so.
Can we talk about how you met your wife?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was still in my uniform, and that resettlement camp, we were waiting to be discharged. So every Saturday, we used to go to a town not far away. It's a very famous town now. It always was, called Bath. It's a Roman city, old Roman city. So every Saturday we used to go there and go to the pub, have beer. And then they always had a big hall and a dance every Saturday. And very famous American bands used to play there. So we used to go there to watch, listen to the band, but most of all looking for the girls. It so happened I met my wife there. She was there chaperoning for her sister, younger sister. And that's how it started. And I met her family, and they were very, very nice to me. And I developed very good relationship with her father, and we had a great time.
What was her name?
And his name?
No, your wife's name.
First name?
Your wife's name.
Yeah, Eileen. Yeah. And so I was discharged eventually. And we got married. And her father was very influential in that town. And he had lots of different nice contacts. And he got me a job. I always wanted to draw. he got me a job as a junior draftsman in the company. And then I gradually progressed to different companies, went to school, and got a diploma, mechanical diploma. And then eventually we got two sons, Paul, and it was a very exciting life. They grew up there, very nice town. And then England was kind of in political turmoil because there was a problem with the Suez Canal and so on. And I decided I've traveled so much, I could settle down in one place. So I had a cousin in Vancouver, British Columbia, that already settled. And he said, why don't you come over? And we did. So I worked in Vancouver, Canada. And jobs were very shaky at that time. And I remember going down from the office where I worked. There was a newsstand down below. So we used to pick up and looked at Los Angeles Times, looked at the jobs in Los Angeles. Because 1960, at that time, aerospace industry was absolutely booming in Southern California, Los Angeles. And so we said the guy, there was 6 of us, wanted, were not settled. So we said one guy that never been here said, we will rely on you. If you like Los Angeles, the place, then we'll trust you, and we all apply to go to Los Angeles. He came here and went back. He said, I don't care what you think, but I'm already going, I'm packing. So happened that he landed in Santa Monica. And going from cold, rainy Vancouver, coming to Santa Monica, standing on the promenade there, all the palm trees swaying. That sold him and sold us. And we came in 1960. But before we came, I had a friend that already worked for the company here. And he said, if you send your resume, we'll see if they can offer you a job. I did, and they did offer me a job. So I came, they were all came at once, 6 families came at once, and I got a job in West Los Angeles. And lived ever happy since.
Now, how would you say that the experiences that you had as a teenager and
Right.
through what you went through, how did that shape your life afterwards?
It did. I had to make a lot of decisions, like moving, having family in England, and we had nothing. I like moving to Canada and moving different places, and somehow it helped me look back. It helped me to make a right decision. I don't know how, but it did make a right decision. And all the decisions that I made proved to be right. Here I am at my age. I'm very satisfied. Here I've picked a hospice, for example. I'm 96. I have not many years to go. And I'm very lucky to have a family like Paul that supports me. And I'm very happy where I am. And I'm at peace of mind, again, because I made the right decision. Before I moved to this place, I lived in a, next door there's a 7-story building called Ventura Townhouse. It was a very nice place, very nice place. And I was completely independent. I had rented a room there. And I had to fall, and I couldn't manage by myself anymore. So I had to go through this place in order to go back to the other place. It's a part of a routine, I guess. Anyway, so I started to recover here. I like the people, I like the stuff. And here I am.
My last question for you is, if you had any advice that you could give to my generation or future generations, what would you be able to offer?
That's what. As you go through life, most of the time, you are relying on your common sense. You know, you don't touch the hot plate because it's hot, because your common sense tells you not to do that. Common sense tells you to be careful with something, and you don't do that. And you listen to your common sense all the time. And I'm afraid that at present time, common sense is replaced by people get hooked on iPhones. They don't use common sense most of the time. Social media, they develop things that they rely on it. So the common sense is lost completely. And so I said, don't rely on what you listen. Just think, would you do that if your common sense would tell you not to do that? That's it. Use your common sense.
Well, I want to thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
For sitting down
yes.
and sharing your story with me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So, were you satisfied with with my performance?
Unbelievable. I wouldn't call it a performance, though.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very grateful.
Thank you.